on a transformative journey of self-discovery and growth. My name is Christy, and I'm usually joined by my co-host Jen, but she's unfortunately not with us today. Together, we are here to explore the depths of human potential, guided by insightful guests from diverse ranges of modalities. Now, our aim is to provide you with tools, the wisdom that you need to elevate your spiritual journey and awaken your true self. Today, we have an incredible guest with us, a beacon of inspiration who has triumphed over adversity to emerge as a guide for others. August is a true example of transformation, having transcended a challenging past to become a beacon of light to those seeking to connect deeply with their intuition, psychic abilities, and inner healing. August's background is truly remarkable. He's conquered a childhood marked by abuse and its lingering effects, breaking free from the clutches of negative patterns and self-doubt. He's dedicated himself to understanding the complexities of psychology, trauma, and personal development, ultimately leading him to a profound journey of self-discovery. Today, August shares his expertise in holistic therapy, life coaching, and psychic development. He's here to discuss how we can heal from past traumas, connect with our intuition, and even communicate with the loved ones that have passed over. So, if you're on the path of self exploration and transformation, you're in the right place. Let's dive into this enriching conversation and discover how you can eradicate subconscious roadblocks and truly embrace your true, authentic self. August is on his way in.
Hey, Christy.
Thank you. Hey, thank you for joining us, August.
Yeah, welcome. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, beautiful. August, I would love for you to maybe begin with just briefly sharing your journey from overcoming an abusive childhood to becoming this beacon of transformation that we see in the world today.
Yeah, sure. So, it's kind of like, you've always been on this journey. You don't realize you're on a journey until you look back one day and you're like, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of how it was for me. I had, I grew up in in a family that wasn't very close. There was a lot of turmoil. It was a chaotic environment.
Mm.
And, so there's a lot of the patterns and things that developed as a child. And then in my mid 30s, I had a spiritual awakening that just rocked me to my core, and
Mm.
everything changed from there. Like for me personally, I was always somebody that was into personal development, always wanting to better themselves, very positive outlook, but it was all surface level until that I had this awakening.
Mm.
And to make a long story short, is basically I was engaged at the time, and my fiance left me. It was out of the blue, and that's what kind of like woke me up. And it was really tough. We had a child together, and it was just a really tough point for me. And it was during that moment that I was like, I knew that there was more to life than this, right? And I
Mm.
could start to feel and sense these energies around me. And I didn't know really what that was or what to expect. All I know is that at the time it scared me. And so I didn't know what else to do. So I called my therapist and I was like, look, I'm experiencing these things. There's energy around me. I think I'm seeing spirits and ghosts and all this other stuff. And they're like, come on in. And I was like, great, this is it for me. And so, make a long story short, she ended up being very involved in the spiritual community. And she ended up telling me, she was like, look, I think you're having a spiritual awakening. You are definitely not in psychosis. There's nothing crazy going on. And so she kind of like settled me into things, right? And I felt a lot more comfortable, but still afraid, still afraid of
Mm.
this journey that I had before me. And I knew, like, of course, in that moment, I'm deep in grief, and I know that I have to heal some and get through this. And that's really what started my healing journey. I found my way into, expressive therapies, somatic
Mm.
therapies, and these different trauma focused modalities. And what I noticed is the more that I was diving into these things, the more that I was cleaning up myself, and my emotional baggage, the more that I was opening up spiritually as well. And I started to
Mm.
experience all kinds of phenomenon. And so that's kind of where the journey began for me, you know?
Beautiful. I think, yeah, one, I think it was great that you had a therapist that was was into spirituality, to be able to see that this was something that you weren't going crazy and all the things, and you were able to get guidance from someone like that you trusted. I think that's great. Healing past trauma is also a crucial step in a spiritual journey. Could you elaborate on how healing trauma impacts our intuitive flow and connection to our spiritual team or the
Yeah. So,
spiritual realm even?
so I had a couple initial experiences right after my spiritual awakening where
Mm,
I was experiencing spirits. Looking back now, I know those were my spirit guides. We have a relationship. So there were two spirits that I encountered, and they really scared me. And just was my own mind and stuff coming in. There was nothing that happened that was crazy or anything. It was just them wanting to connect. And so I resisted for a long time, but what ended up happening is those first, after I had that initial awakening and I was experiencing them, I talked to my therapist about it. She's like, look, just talk with them, see what's going on. And so I did. And I spoke with them for 3 days. I actually channeled them for 3 straight days, and I filled up like 5 notebooks full of like
mm,
information and all kinds of stuff. And then it just went away. It went away. I wasn't able to connect with that world anymore. And I, wasn't really feeling things like I was feeling prior to that. And so, I knew that I wanted it back. And so I set out
mm,
on this journey to try and figure that out, to see how to do that. But nothing was really working. Nothing really was helping me, until I found my way into some of those deeper therapeutic
mm,
modalities. And that's where cleaning up a lot of that stuff allowed me to, get into some of the deeper spiritual work. And it wasn't until I started to clean up some of that stuff that I started to actually experience, a deeper connection with spirit world, with our intuitive and psychic abilities.
mm. Would it be fair to say that as you do, let's call it the work, because there's lots of work, right?
Mhm.
As you do the work, you are connecting deeper with yourself.
Mhm.
And as you connect deeper with yourself, you're connecting deeper with spirit. Do you find that?
Well, yeah, and yeah, absolutely 100%. But what I find more than anything is that what prevents us from connecting with our abilities is usually some sort of unhealed trauma, specifically
Hmm.
some sort of insecurities. And
Yeah.
it's when we address those insecurities is when we're actually able to face things and move forward.
Yeah.
For instance, like what I've found is there's really three main insecurities that hold people back, right?
Mm.
It's a fear of rejection,
Hmm.
it's imposter syndrome, and it's self-doubt. Those three
Yeah.
things that really prevent people. And so we can do all of the technique, we can read all of the books, we can do everything, but if we're not addressing those three insecurities, that's
Mm.
what's ultimately going to prevent you from being able to connect with your inner abilities.
Yeah. Beautiful. So many people are striving to connect with their abilities, their intuition. Could
Mhm.
you provide some insight into developing or deepening one's intuitive abilities?
Yeah, so I like to look at things as like there's nothing to develop, there's nothing to strengthen, there's nothing.
Mm.
You're already fully strong. Everything is already wide open and and fully activated, deep, strong, whatever you want to call it. All of it's ready to go. But what happens is we don't have an awareness of it. We're dissociated from it, right?
Mm.
And so it's not about really developing or learning technique or doing anything. It's about bringing an awareness to our abilities. And I use an analogy, right? And it's like, you can, everybody out there that's watching, if you want to just bring an awareness to your heart right now, and even like start to touch your heart and feel it and really connect with your heart and notice the sensations. Maybe you start to feel some heartbeats, and then really connect with it and really start to sink in and feel your heart beating, right? And if you really bring your focus there, you'll notice every single heartbeat that you have. But before
Mm.
I told you to focus on it, you didn't even know your heart was beating. And that's exactly what it's like. We need to bring
Mm.
that level of awareness to our abilities, and then it just happens.
Yeah. Beautiful. I think one of my favorite topics is spirit guides, and I'm curious, how can we establish and nurture a relationship with our spirit guides to enhance this spiritual journey that we're on?
So just ask for it, just
Mm,
ask for it. There's a lot of misconceptions about how to work with spirit guides, and what I see in the spiritual community is people thinking they're more or less like a genie, like come in and
mm,
fix my life and do this stuff for me. And it's really not like that. That's why a lot of people get discouraged and they're like, oh, my guides ignore me. They won't do this, won't do that. Well, you're right. They won't intervene in our life in that way because we need to look at them as more of like these professional advisors, right?
mm,
And you can think of it like as a business or like a CEO. The CEO is surrounded by these teams of advisors, right? And they're giving him information. They're providing all of the background. They're doing the data. They're crunching the numbers. Just feeding the CEO information. They're not guiding him or swaying him in any way or another, but they're
mm,
giving this CEO all of this stuff so they can make the best informed decision possible. And that's exactly what our spirit guides are there for. We
mm,
need to ask for the advisor that best suits what are we wanting to accomplish in that moment, right? If we're wanting to start a new business, then ask for a spirit guide that can guide us and
mm,
give us information on business. If we're looking for help with parenting or wellness or whatever it may be, just
mm,
be specific in the guidance you're looking for, and then ask, dialogue, treat them as an
mm.
advisor, not as somebody that you can snap your fingers and they're going to change your life.
Yeah, they're called spirit guides for a reason. They're guides. They're not doers, right? They don't come in with that
Right.
magic wand. They don't come in with that magic wand, And I think too, like when we do ask for that guidance and direction, it's really up to us to take the action. Well, one, to listen, but then to make the choice and own the decision and then take the action, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've found that there's really kind of there's a couple different rules, if you will, or just things that I've observed in working with spirit guides. Number one, they will not interject in your life in any way. They won't even make themselves known unless you're reaching out to them and you
Yeah.
ask for their help. Number two, they'll never tell you what decision to make. And number three, they're never going to do the work for you. And
No.
so that's my observation in working with guides, how they kind of like operate, and based on the
Yeah.
misconceptions I see out there, how people try to work with them.
Yeah. So when you hear people say, "Oh my God, my guides told me to do this," is that ego or is that spirit guides?
So that can be, so my guides told me to do this. Yeah, that's definitely something else coming in, not
Mm,
your spirit guides. My spirit guides told me to take a left when I wanted to take a right. No, the spirit guides are going to tell you, hey, if you go left, here's a lot of possibilities and a lot of things that can occur. And then if you went right, here's some other things that would happen and some things
yeah.
that about the on the right.
Yeah.
What do you want to do?
Yeah.
Well, I want, and that's where the dialogue comes in. Well, I want to, I want to make the left because I'm looking for this, that, and this. And the spirit guide will, okay, well, those things exist here, but these are the steps that you're going to have to take if you make that left. Right. And so it's more of a dialogue back and forth. It's not something my guides told me this.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and I've got a question here from one of our current viewers. Sky, she says, I know my guides, oh, I've just lost it. Hang on. I know my guides are around, but I can't seem to communicate with them. I've tried reaching out. What would you say to that? What advice would you give her?
So I hear this question a lot. And so what I'd say is, that it always comes down to what we expect, right? When spirit guides or any kind of spirit isn't communicating with us, it's not that they're not communicating with us, it's that we're expecting them to communicate in a way that they're not communicating,
Mm,
right? So many people expect to have like some kind of like whisper in the ear or like some like profound experience that like it's like, oh, here they are, right? And it's more subtle than that. We can have these huge grandiose experiences, but
mm,
99% of the time it's way more
mhm.
subtle.
Very little.
And yeah. And so one of the ways that I recommend connecting with your guides is through the body, right? The body is like, and I use this for everything with all of our
Hmm.
abilities, right? The body, we treat it as like this tuning fork that's open, that can receive different information, right? And so if we can focus on our body long enough and start asking to engage with our guides, start asking them to show up, start asking them for advice while we're holding that focus on our body, we will feel them. We will feel some sort of energy, we'll feel something happen. And then once you feel that, that's their energy, right? That's their energy. And so go ahead and ask your question or whatever you're wanting guidance in, and you'll notice the energy starts shifting and feeling different. Okay. And then that's where you need to just sit and feel. Sit and feel as you're engaging. And if you can sit and feel long enough, you will get the message. You will get your answer. You pay attention to like the thought that comes, right? To the knowing that's just there. And it's more about doing, right? Than you won't recognize unless you're doing, right? Because the way that the information comes, it can sound like a thought, but it's not a thought that you think. It's a thought that you receive. It can come as this like flash, this knowing that comes so fast that you miss it if you're not sitting there settling in focused, right? It can come in like this wave of emotion, right? Also, all these different things, and so if we're not able to like hear or sense or feel our guides, we need to bring our awareness back to the body and focusing on the body.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, for me, when people come and say, I feel like I'm disconnected from spirit, the first place I send them to is the body. If you're disconnected from spirit, you're not connected to your body. Let's start there and build that connection, right?
Absolutely.
You also specialize in helping people connect with passed over loved ones. How does this process bring comfort and insight to those who are grieving?
Well, I mean, most people that come to me for, wanting to connect with their loved ones, they've experienced a loss, and it's so deep and painful. They're not really sure, to most people that have never experienced loss like that or been open to the spirit world think that, my loved one is gone and that's it. They cease to exist. And when they feel them for the first time and they know that's them, it can bring a lot of comfort, right? It can bring a lot of knowing that our loved ones are still here, right? But just in a different way. They're not here in a physical body, but they're still here energetically. And then when they actually get to connect with them and experience them and have those conversations and say those things that were left unsaid and say those final goodbyes, or just reconnect and have a relationship with them in spirit, can be very healing.
Yeah, beautiful. You also have you're also known for guiding individuals with their psychic abilities. You sort of have this, like, how would I say this widespread tool, I suppose, of helping people not just connect to themselves but passed over loved ones. And you also work with trauma, correct? Hypnosis and all the things, which I'm going to get
Not
to shortly.
hypnosis.
Not hypnosis. Okay. There's so many. I can't wait to get to a few questions down, because I'm like waiting to get to that part. But psychic development is, quite a big thing in what we do. Could you share some techniques or practices to help our listeners tap into their latent psychic abilities?
Yeah. So here's the thing that I've realized over my journey, and and for myself, is that it's all the same. Communicating with spirits, working with psychic energy, your intuition, healing, all of it is the same, right? It's when we're communicating with a loved one or a spirit guide or any other spirit, we're communicating with energy. When we're working psychically, we're reading energy, and when we're healing, we're learning how to manipulate energy. So it's all energy, and the way that you engage it is pretty much all the same. And so whether you're wanting to connect with a loved one or read the energy of a situation or connect with a decision that you're trying to make in your life so you know which best route to go, it all comes down to bringing awareness to feeling energy. And feeling energy always comes back to the body. And a lack of connection to the body is, like you said, it's healing and getting over trauma. And so, everybody can do this. Everybody has these abilities, right? It's not something that only a select few have. And I know that I get pushback on that a lot, because it's like, well, so and so has been doing this since they were a child. Well, that's because so and so was either thrown into such a traumatic situation
Mm-hmm.
where they had nobody but themselves in the spirit world. Okay, that's one scenario.
Yep.
Or so and so was raised in a spiritually nurturing environment where their parents or their caregivers embraced this lifestyle,
Mm-hmm.
didn't instill fear, and helped them nurture these abilities. And that's why. And so everyone else was had it conditioned out of them one way or another, because we come into this world completely wide open with everything
Mm-hmm.
intact, and we can see that with young kids and young children. And so it's just a matter of reconnecting with that, and the way to do that is through the body, is through feeling
Mm.
and sensing energy.
Beautiful. Now, your membership program sounds absolutely incredible. Can you walk us through the key components and benefits of this program for those seeking to take their spiritual journey to the next level? What can they
Yeah,
expect from
sure.
that mentorship?
Sure. So the number one thing that I do in my program is break false beliefs. There's so many people, there's so much
Mm,
that comes in that people have been going down this, spiritual rabbit hole for so long, trying to figure it out. The people that come into my program through grief, maybe they had no kind of spiritual, they weren't meditating, there were no chakras, they didn't even really believe that they can do this, but grief brought them to at least want to try.
mm,
They're way easier to get into having an experience because they have no preconceived beliefs or notions that were instilled throughout the spiritual community, because there is a lot of bad information out there.
mm,
And so number one thing that I do with people is the first part of my mentorship program is a course, right? And that's really what it is to set expectations and show you, and to give you some information. But the way that I take people through it is experiential, right?
mm,
I don't like to lecture, right? And so I'll give some information, and then I'm a firm believer in offering practical steps to have an experience. So I'll give some information, and then I'll give practical steps to experience what I just
mm,
talked about. And so I bring the first step in my mentorship program is to bring people through that part of it, right? Where
mm,
they go and they just get all the background and get all the information. By the end of the course, they're already having experiences, they're doing stuff.
mm,
And then the second part of the mentorship is actually doing the work. Now we're going to meet up, we're going to get together, and we're going to talk to spirits. We're going to communicate with loved ones. We're going to read psychic energy. We're going to work with your intuition. We're going to actually do it because you've already got all the information, all the know-how, everything that you needed. You've already started to experience stuff. So now we're going to do it when we get together. And then anything that's in your way, I'm going to help you break through it in real time, right then and there.
mm.
And so, that's what it's all about in,
Yeah,
in a
beautiful.
nutshell.
I love that. It really aligns with my beliefs and my values around teaching as well, because I think we're all different. We all hold energy differently, feel energy differently. We're all different vibrations. And rather than having someone hand you a book and go, this is it's not the way. I say to people, if someone hands you a book and says, this is how it's done, run a mile, because you're the one that has to experience it. So, when I teach from my experience, but I always guide people through experiences as well. And, I would love your thoughts around this. That we are different energies, and what I feel and what I experience, the way that I see, the way that I hear, the way that you feel and hear and experience is different to others, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so, people, this falls back to a question I get all the time. People always say, hey, do you have any book recommendations, or what should I read? What should I
Like,
do? Uh, all of them. Go
yeah,
and do all of them.
yeah,
Explore all of them. Go and try
yeah,
everything, do everything. But here's the thing that I tell people. There's one caveat, is that whatever you're reading, I don't care how many TV shows this person has been on. I don't care how many followers that they have, how many books they've written, how many positive reviews that they
mm,
have. Never adopt something as the ultimate truth unless you
no,
can have an experience that validates that. Right.
hmm,
And so, as long as you're going through with that, you will find the truth. You will find
yeah,
your truth as long as you validate through personal experience. Right. And I tell everybody, they're like, well, what about faith? Have no faith. I don't believe in faith. Take and throw faith out of the window. Personal experience trumps any kind of I hope and wish this happens, right?
Absolutely.
And so as long as you're having those experiences, then you know that it's validated. But the second you go through a course and it's like none of this worked, the go-to from most spiritual practitioners is, oh, you need to meditate more.
Oh, right.
And I don't teach any meditation at all. I don't do any kind of meditation with anyone.
Yeah. Yeah. I I had a question, it's just completely dropped out of my head.
Oh,
But Sky has just said, I'm in the middle of like 6 books.
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Experiment with them all. Yeah.
Right. Experiment. Oh, that's the question I had. I know that there's this story that you had some teachers, and so I'm self-taught. I had no one but spirit actually teach me, and a couple of ladies in a crystal shop maybe answered 3 or 4 questions for me. But you had guides and teachers and did all the learnings, right? But then you kind of went a bit rebel and went off and did your own thing and really embodied spirit in your own unique ways. Can you elaborate a bit more on that?
Yeah. So I had these, like I said, I had those 3 days where I channeled right after my spiritual awakening. I had those 3 days where I channeled those spirit guides of mine and filled up all those notebooks. And then it went completely away. And I knew that I needed to get that back, that I needed to figure it out. And so um I owned several businesses at the time that I ended up closing down and selling, and really dedicating myself to this. And I ended up traveling the world and going to different spiritual retreats, working with a lot of the big names that are out there that have TV shows and books, mentoring with them
Mm,
directly. I ended up going to the Arthur Finlay College in the UK and studying there. And I did all of this stuff for like 2 years. And yeah, there was some cool stuff. I learned some stuff, and I made my way, but I never was able to have an experience like those first 3 days. And everybody talked a big talk and talked a big game, and said, oh, we can do that. I can show you that. And they talked about having experiences like that, but nobody could actually teach me how to do that. It was
mm,
all generic. You need to practice, you need to unfold, you need to develop, you need to meditate more, you need to do this, right? And nobody was ever like, do 1, 2, 3, and it will happen. And that's the way my brain works. And so after 2 years of all of this stuff and in doing all of these trainings, I realized that it was all bullshit, and that I was going to have to go against it. I was going to have to go out on my own and figure it out, because that's where the businessman kicks in. It's like,
mm-hmm.
well, what would you do if you were doing something in business and all of the advisors weren't able to deliver? What would you do? And you couldn't find anyone to help you.
Yeah.
I would get down in the dirt and I'd figure it out. And so
Yeah.
that's what I decided to do. And so it
Yeah.
took me 6 years of like blood, sweat, and tears, and trial and error, and just never giving up. And people always ask me that, why didn't you give up? Why didn't you just at that moment after you spent those 2 years, why did you keep going?
Mm,
I wanted to give up. And if I hadn't had those experiences in the beginning, I probably would have. But that's
mm,
what kept me going. That's where I knew that it was undeniable,
yeah. You
and
knew it
that's
was
what,
possible.
yeah. And that's what pushed me forward. And the thing that happened is I kept going back to those initial experiences, going,
Mm,
what was different? What was
yeah.
different? And the only thing that was different was I didn't know anything. I didn't
Yeah.
know what meditation was. I didn't know what a chakra was. I didn't know
Yeah.
anything. I brushed my teeth with fluoride toothpaste, right?
Yeah.
Right. I did all of this stuff that you're not supposed to do.
Yeah.
And that was the only difference, that I didn't know anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I have. What are your thoughts? I get this question all the time on my other lives over at the TikTok platform. People go, do I need to stop brushing my teeth with fluoride toothpaste? I'm like, well, you probably need to know if you want to put fluoride into your body to start with, but it's not going to hinder your connection to spirit. Do you believe that too?
Yeah, so I'm a firm believer in looking at the science and reading it, and
Yeah.
and just intuitively, I never felt that was the full picture. And so
Yeah.
yes, fluoride does calcify the pineal gland.
Yeah.
Fluoride will affect the pineal gland if you
Yes.
drink buckets of it every single
Yeah.
day. The dose is the poison, right?
Yeah.
Does it accumulate? Yes, but our body will naturally get rid of it. And
Right.
there were some studies, and I wish I had them here where I could quote. There were some studies that were done on the amount of fluoride that's in tap water.
Mm.
And the studies came out that when it came down to the parts per million, your morning coffee was more toxic than the amount of toothpaste that you were brushing your teeth with.
That's funny. And it does come back to, like, we have to be in, like I just say, you have to be in your body. Your pineal gland, is your third eye, but your whole entire body is the receiver. That's only one part of the receiver. We need to feel, and we don't feel through that, right? It is part of the conduit, but not the entirety
Yeah,
of
and
it.
and the pineal gland in itself is something like yes. So what I think the pineal gland is really good for is that once you become really in tune with the body, you can learn the pineal gland can secrete all kinds of chemicals to
Mm-hmm.
create these altered states, right? But here's the thing: is that altered states will get you there. But number one, when you're in an altered state, like in a plant medicine or DMT, or you have control of your pineal gland and the chemicals that's
Mm.
secreting, like all of that stuff, you don't have a lot of control over your experience when
Mm.
you're in that altered state. It's kind of like it's all happening and you're just watching it. You may be able to engage a little bit, and
Mm.
that's all fine and well. But what I like to share with people and what I teach people is that you don't have to go into those altered states of consciousness, and you can still be grounded in your body,
Yeah.
sitting there just like you and I are sitting, and have very vivid and real experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of teachings out there that teach people to go to these heightened esoteric states. Like, it takes a lot of practice to get to those states. You're right. And, like, we can just do this now. Like, we can. Like, it's not something, I think, sustaining it and connecting with it, that you need to create consistent, committed practices to be able to do that. But we can just turn it on, and we can just do it now, right?
Yeah. I don't care who you are, what you know, if you have a willingness to do it, you can have an extremely vivid experience right now, this second.
Yeah. I people say, it's a gift. Why, if everyone has it, why is it a gift? I said, well, actually, that's not the gift. The gift is actually choosing to access, the abilities, the intuition, the flow, right? That's a
Mhm.
belief that I have anyway. So you have, sorry, did you want to say something?
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, I don't really use that word either.
No.
I don't call them gifts, I call them abilities.
Right, like, it's like outside, it's just we just have this much more subtle energy body flowing through us. So it's so minute compared to the bigness of our actual physical vision and physical hearing and physical feeling and sensations. I call it, like, you see, but you see invisibly and you hear invisibly. It's like, it's just it, I don't know how else to say it, but it's quite minute. Everyone has access to it.
And I love how you said that, because that's the other thing. I don't use any of the fancy Claire words either, clairvoyance,
Yeah,
clairsentient. Like, you're seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, or knowing,
yeah,
right?
that's
And
it.
then you're either doing it
That's it.
psychically or you're doing it physically.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, that's it. That's it. So, with our psychic abilities, and the intuition, how do we enhance our relationship to that? Oh, sorry, no, let me rephrase that question. How can we deepen our psychic abilities and intuition and have that enhance our relationships with others and ourselves?
Say the second part again.
You say, how can we use our psychic abilities and intuition to enhance our relationships with others and ourselves?
So we have to connect deeply with them. And the only way to connect deeply with them, this is part of what I preach all day long, is that the only way to connect deeply with our abilities is to stop practicing and turn it into a
Yes.
way of life.
Yeah.
That's it. Is if you're treating it as something you have to practice and you have to work at, like, yeah, you
Hmm.
can get there, but when you incorporate it as a way of life, then it just happens. And it's
Yeah.
just the way that things are. It's not something you have to practice. It's the way that you navigate this
It
reality and
is.
beyond.
Yeah. It's like brushing your teeth every morning and having a shower. I like to look at life like a ceremony, right? And connecting is
Yeah.
just a ritual. Yeah.
Yeah, and have fun with it. Like I tell people all the time, like one of the things I do with my kids is like, when we go out to eat or something and we have, and we're waiting for the bill to come, we'll all like feel into the energy there and try to
Mm.
like tune into what the amount's going to be. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
so, things like that. And just like even in my normal mundane day-to-day stuff, I wake up in the morning, I never just grab something out of the closet. I feel into it, right? I
Yeah.
feel into the energy of the clothes, the colors, and everything, and I select what I'm going to wear that day
Mm.
in a very with very intuitively. And I do
Mm.
that throughout my entire life. Like when I get in the car and I know that I got to go somewhere, like I feel into the different route that I'm going to take, or I get into the car and does this feel right? No,
Mm.
something's off. What is it? There's an accident on the normal route. I ain't going to need to go this way. Right. And so
Yeah.
treating it in that level of making it into your life. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Now, I'm going to shift gears a little bit. You mentioned that eradicating subconscious beliefs and roadblocks before is a secret to lasting happiness. Oh,
Mhm.
I think I've read that somewhere. It's on your website, maybe. Could you provide some examples on how these roadblocks might be holding people back in various aspects of their lives?
Yeah, so in in relationships, health, wealth, what are the three? The health, wealth, and health, wealth, and relationships, right?
Yeah.
Those are the three areas that hold everybody back, right?
Yeah.
It's we have these beliefs of, we see all of these things. Like let's use it in the context of like finances and money. Like we see all of these people that have all of these things, but somewhere in our subconscious we believe that they're different than us, and that
Mm.
they have access to certain things that we're never going to have access to. And that's just a belief. Now, where did that come from? Right? Where did that come? Were you raised in poverty and that's all you saw and that's all you knew? And
Mm.
that's what led you into these beliefs. And the way that you manage your finances is very different than the way that somebody that's very wealthy would manage their finances. Right? And so it's a lack of skills, but
Mm-hmm.
we take it on. It's a lack of skills that we're unaware of, but because we have certain beliefs, we see it as something that it's not, right? We see it as this thing that's just like, impossible. It's just not us, right? And
Mm.
once we get to the root of whatever that belief is, let me try and think of a better example. But like, okay, so let's say I'll use a case study of mine, all right, from my therapy practice. So I had a woman that came to me that she was having issues with her husband. Okay. And it wasn't because of him, it was because of her. She had this crippling lack of confidence, like just this really lack of worth, right? That's what
Mm.
the complex was, this lack of worth. Despite like a very supportive husband constantly reassuring him, telling, look, it's okay, like, everything's good, like we're good, like you're an amazing wife, I love you, like very, very supportive, right? I met them
Mm.
both. It was just a wonderful couple. And so I began to work with the wife. In our first session, we always look at the affect, right? The affect of the emotion. We use that,
Mm.
okay, to help get a deeper picture, to unpack what's really going
Mm.
on. And so when she came in to see me, we started to, I asked her, I said, recall a time that you just didn't feel like you were good enough for your husband. And she
Mm.
started to recall, she started to feel the emotions, all of that started to come up. And that led and opened up into a memory where she was in second grade. All right.
Mm.
And she was at this spelling bee, right? Is this very it was this very big deal. It was a spelling bee for second grade. Her parents were blue collar, working class. They took the day off to come watch the spelling bee. It was this big thing, this huge event at her school. And she was like one of the first people that got called up to spell a word.
Mm.
And she was so excited. She spelled it very, very fast, but correctly. She spelled it very fast, but the judge misheard her and thought that she spelled it wrong and told her to sit down. And she was so shocked about that, right? Because she was really good, really, really good at spelling. She was so shocked by that she couldn't speak up. And so she went and
Wow.
sat down in her chair and had to go sit on the stage in her chair while she watched 100+ students go through this spelling bee. And she sat in there. And so we're exploring, like she was totally unaware. All she remembers is I sat there and I felt like crap. I couldn't believe. And so as we unpacked it and we started to move into the emotions and the affect of it and started to get the thoughts of that second grade girl, there were
Yeah.
thoughts like, I can't believe this. I'm terrible. My parents aren't going to forgive me. They're going to think that I just messed this all up.
Mm,
This is awful. I can't believe it. I'm so embarrassed that I did this in front of them. They took the day off and I did all right. And so there's all of these thoughts, this second grade
mm,
child is internalizing in that moment. Right. And so that is an example, right, of how something so
yeah.
what seems insignificant, right? It's not even traumatic, right?
Yeah.
Compared to some other events, right? But it is a form of trauma. And we worked with that and we helped nurture and heal that part of herself that was having those thoughts, and she never experienced that with her husband again. So
Mm,
breaking free from those subconscious beliefs that she had no idea she was even aware of, right? She had no idea where this came from. And so by the time we got into and unpacked the subconscious, that's what we found. And so
wow.
by breaking free and eradicating those beliefs,
Yeah.
it led her to have a very happy and fulfilling relationship.
Beautiful. I think, the inner child is where a lot of our trauma is held, and it can just be one small incident that has just like rocked our soul and just locked in, and it just plays out in like so many areas of our life.
Yeah. Yeah. And trauma is really subjective. It's all about on the individual. Two people can have the same exact experience and one
Mm,
person can affect it totally different and the other person could wash right over them.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's even still, there's three main different types, clinically speaking, there's three main types of trauma. There's
Mm,
acute, complex, and chronic. Right. And so
mm,
acute is something, that happens, one big event like a car accident or something like that. Right.
mm,
And then you have complex. That's what most people who are raised in, caregivers who didn't know how to
mhm.
self-regulate themselves. Right. And so there was always the caregivers took it out on the children.
Yeah.
That's usually the complex trauma. And then there's the chronic trauma. That's something that just the same thing happens over and over and over again, like, going to school and getting bullied.
Mm, yeah. I think, is it the complex trauma where they've got the caregivers that are kind of dysregulated and I've lost the word, but you sort of have to walk on eggshells around them, and it's usually
Mhm.
the empaths that I see that have that trauma in their lives.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, absolutely. And so I believe that we all. I think I believe. I talk about empathy as being one of our psychic senses, and so I
Mm,
believe that we all have empathic abilities. We all have the
mm,
ability to feel, have empathy,
yeah,
and but to speak what you're saying here, though, Christy, is that yeah, it's the ones that had to walk on eggshells as a child are the ones that really I call it a dominant sense. They'll have a dominant
mm,
sense of
yeah,
empathy. And that's because they were children raised in a hostile environment. And in order to
yeah,
survive, they needed to know how to read the energy of a room
yeah,
and read the energy of people.
yeah. So they walk around with their energy is like wide open. It's like they know what they're walking into almost energetically before they even put their hand on that door to open it. And they forget as adults that they're still completely open. These are the ones that I see that are like, oh my God, people just drain me. I can't go on public transport. I can't go into public. I feel everything. I feel everyone.
Yeah, so that's indicative of a family that has no boundaries, right? And so
Hmm.
when we're raised in a family that has absolutely no boundaries and everybody's enmeshed, we don't learn how to hold healthy boundaries. And if we're not holding healthy boundaries in our personal relationships, the energetic realms don't respect them either.
Yeah. Sky says walking in from school, sensing the energy to see if I should stay or go straight to my room. Yeah, that's
Yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, beautiful. So we're sort of heading into wrapping up now, August. Could you offer, like, if you could offer our audience one piece of advice or practical tip for people that are on their own journey of self-discovery, transformation, psychic awakening, spiritual awakening, what would that one tip or piece of guidance be?
Stop trying. Stop trying and stop trying. Focus on yourself. The only thing that's holding you back is you.
It is. I love that. Stop trying. So stop trying and start doing, or stop trying and start being?
Yeah, stop trying because it all once if you start working on yourself, everything happens. Everything
Yeah.
will just happen. You don't have to try to do anything. If you
Mm,
start working on yourself, because I tell people, that I'm working with, right? The things that hold you back in life are the same things that hold you back in spiritually. So we
mhm,
can walk down a spiritual path and we can address them in a spiritual container, in a spiritual context, which starts to become a slippery slope. It starts to look a
mm,
little woo woo, and it's not a very grounded way to approach things. Or we can look at your life and we can fix all of that stuff, and by doing that, it frees up your spiritual path. You don't have to address
mm,
it. It's not in the way anymore. And so it
mm.
doesn't matter where you address it, as long as you're addressing it. It's just a lot easier to do when you look at your life and you do it from that point.
Yeah, beautiful. Before we go, I'm just going to drop some links below. So on the podcast, they'll be in the comments, and on our socials, they'll be in the comments as in the chat as well. You have a free ebook. I think it's called Spirit. Is it called Spirit Communication?
Yeah, so I have a quick, yeah, I have just the couple steps laid out that, will get you through it,
Yeah.
that will get somebody, you can communicate with a loved one or even a spirit guide. Yeah, so it's quick, it's a PDF with some steps that you can follow.
Yeah. Beautiful. And they can just find that in your stand store, or the links are below. Also, you can follow August on Instagram. It is at August Official, and also over on TikTok, which is at new_age_mythbuster. Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time today. I know we've chatted before live on TikTok. I love these conversations. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you too. It's nice to connect
Beautiful.
again.
Yeah, again. All right. So, guys, this has been a wonderful and enlightening conversation with August today. It's been incredible to witness how he has not only overcome his past, but is also helping countless others to do the same. Remember, if you are resonating with August's insights and guidance, make sure you download his free spirit communication guide. As I said before, you can find that in his stand store in the comments below. And consider exploring his mentorship program for a deeper dive into your spiritual journey. Thank you for joining us today on Elevate Your Spiritual Awakening. Keep embracing your journey of self discovery, and remember, the path to transformation starts within. Until next time, stay connected, stay inspired, and keep elevating your spiritual awakening. Much love.